The Volcom model. In this video, we'll be having a human model of communication, may it be face-to-face interaction, digital interactions, and the integration of verbal and nonverbal communication. We will also ponder on how these can be applied in modern times, and how each element interacts with one another. Communication. It may be defined as the process of exchanging information between a human source and a human receiver to achieve mutual harmony. However, you may be wondering how a dynamic process of communication can be related to the sports volleyball. Let's dig deeper into each element. The communication process starts with the sender. In a volleyball game, the sender is a server which serves and encodes the message through a channel. After the service, the ball or the message will now be relayed to the receiver. In this case, the opposing team will be the receiver, which is accountable for the decoding of information. However, note that during the process of communication, there will be communication barriers that may hinder the effective and spontaneous transmitting of message. In volleyball, the net can be a representation of factors that may affect the process. After identifying certain barriers, a feedback is expected to ensure that the receiver received and understood the message in the same schema as the sender. However, not all feedbacks are considered responses that are intended to answer or reply to the sender. Some feedbacks can be in the form of affirmative or negative body language, questions, or simply statements. Now let's scrutinize each element of communication. Sender. The sender is responsible in initiating a conversation. Without the sender, the idea cannot be formulated and transmitted. Before the sender can send the message to the receiver, it will first undergo the process of encoding. Encoding is the process of passing a message using certain symbols such as words, actions, signals, pictures, and so on. Encoding converts the subject into symbols. The primary goal is to be understood by the receiver. In real-life situations, encoding is a process where you carefully take an approach as a means of conveying thoughts. Have you ever taken time to correct typographical errors or misspelled words, or structures of sentences just because it altered the meaning? Channel. A channel is a means through which the message travels. In face-to-face interaction, the channel involves our senses. When we are communicating online, the channel may be the computer or cell phone. These physical means can have different psychological impacts and interpretation based on the situation. Furthermore, the channel can also indicate whether the conversation is formal or informal. Have you ever waited for so long just to wait for a message to be sent and then realize that it cannot be transmitted due to slow connection? This is an example of a communication barrier. Barriers can be classified into internal and external factors. In volleyball, the focus and coordination of players can result to wrong formation. Thus, the ball will not be received properly. This is an example of an internal barrier. Message. A message is an idea being expressed through verbal or nonverbal behaviors that are enacted by the communicator and interrupted by the receiver. The message can also be intentional or unintentional. When the message is intentional, we already have an image portrayed in our mind that we can successfully convey to the minds of others in a precise manner. Contrarily, an intentional message is sent when the message we want to deliver creates an altered interpretation received by the other person. For example, let's say our friend asked you if you would like to go to the beach. Then you answered, yeah, sure, but you actually said it while watching a YouTube video. Hence, you seem like you replied in a neutral tone. In return, your friend may misinterpret you for having lack of interest when you are in fact, you are really interested in going. Decoding. Decoding is the process of interpreting symbols and converting them into mental images. For instance, the Waze application in your phone provides you with directions that enables you to create strategic routes in your head, thus creating a map that will show you the way. Receiver. The receiver is the person who receives and understands a message in the best possible manner to achieve an effective communication. In our digital world, there are some circumstances wherein the receiver can display a passive approach, thus creating an uncertain response as to whether the message was effectively utilized. For instance, you may encounter people who will leave you in the delivered or seen zone. Although not all interactions require a reaction or reply, it is always nice to show a sign of respect just by nodding or at someone when they ask you if you understand the topic. To continue the cycle of communication, a feedback is expected as a response that would adhere to the given topic. At this point, the receiver will become the sender that will continue the channeling of information. In addition, not all feedbacks require a declarative phrase or sentence. Some feedbacks can also be in the form of a question. For example, a stranger asks you in the location of your mom's office. As a cautious person, you should show cautiousness by asking them their connection or relationship to your mom. Questions can also be asked if you didn't really understand or hear the message sent by the sender.
Given all these information, we can now have a full understanding of a model of communication. Each element can certainly influence the interpretation and dissemination of information. Yes, the elements of communication may look simple on the outside, but is actually more complex when explored using a full lens and focus. Although the process of communication may be affected by various barriers, it is important to know that listening is one of the most important factors to be considered as we communicate. Furthermore, figuring out the importance of a healthy communication is also one of the greatest tasks in being a human.